They recognized him, and that recognition almost cost him his life. The moment he stepped into that territory, he was no longer just a traveler trying to pass through quietly, because he was now seen through the lens of everything people had already heard about him. He was David, the one who had taken down Goliath, and his reputation had already entered the room before he did. That shift alone changed the situation before he had a chance to respond. That is the reality of being known, because your name often arrives before you do and shapes the environment ahead of you. By the time you enter a space, people have already formed expectations about how you will behave and what your presence means. Those expectations influence how they respond, and they begin interpreting your actions through a lens that you did not create in that moment. David was not entering a neutral environment because he was walking into a situation that had already been defined. As the people began to recognize him, the atmosphere shifted in a way that could not be ignored, and the attention around him changed from casual to intentional. Conversations became quieter, but more focused, and the looks he received carried weight that signaled evaluation rather than curiosity. This kind of attention does not leave room for error, because it places pressure on every move you make. It creates a situation where the wrong response can trigger consequences you cannot reverse. This was not the kind of recognition that opens doors or creates opportunity, because it was rooted in tension rather than trust. When people begin to see you as a threat, your options begin to narrow, and your ability to move freely becomes limited. Every action is interpreted through suspicion, and every decision carries more weight than it normally would. In that kind of environment, doing what you would usually do is no longer a safe option. David understood that quickly, and that awareness changed how he approached the moment. Most people, when faced with that kind of pressure, try to remain consistent because they believe staying the same proves strength and stability. They hold on to their identity and assume that consistency will carry them through the situation. What they do not realize is that consistency in the wrong moment reinforces the very perception that creates the danger. David saw something deeper, because he recognized that the expectation people had about him was working against him. If he reinforced it, he would be stepping directly into the outcome they were already preparing for. That realization forced a different kind of decision, one that required him to move beyond what felt natural or expected. He understood that survival in that moment would require strategy, not validation. Instead of reinforcing what they believed, he chose to disrupt it, and that decision changed the direction of the moment. He adjusted his behavior in a way that forced everyone watching him to question what they were seeing. The same man they had just identified began to act in a way that did not match the story they believed about him. That mismatch created tension that could not be resolved quickly. Confusion is powerful because it interrupts certainty, and certainty is what drives fast and confident action. When people are sure about what they are seeing, they move quickly because they believe they understand the situation. When that certainty is disrupted, they hesitate because the situation no longer fits their expectations. David did not try to explain himself, because explanation would not have moved fast enough to change what they believed. Instead, he changed what they saw, and that visual shift began to weaken the certainty they were holding on to. To anyone watching, his behavior suggested instability, but it was not uncontrolled or random. It was deliberate and timed in a way that disrupted their expectations just enough to create doubt. That doubt slowed their response and created something he did not have before. That hesitation created space, and that space changed what was possible in that moment. David did not need to convince them of a new version of himself, because that would have taken too long. He only needed to weaken the certainty they had about the version they already believed. Once that certainty was disrupted, their ability to act with confidence was reduced. They were still watching him, but they were no longer responding the same way they would have if he had remained consistent. The recognition was still present, but it no longer carried the same weight because it was no longer supported by certainty. Without certainty, their response lost urgency, and that shift created an opening that did not exist before. David did not lose control in that moment, even though it may have appeared that way on the surface. What he demonstrated was a different level of control, one that operates beneath expectation and perception. He understood how people process what they see, and he used that understanding to influence their reaction. Instead of confronting the pressure directly, he redirected it. That is the part most people overlook, because they focus on maintaining appearance instead of achieving outcome. They try to prove who they are instead of recognizing when proving it works against them. They stay locked into a version of themselves that no longer fits the situation. David chose strategy over appearance, and that choice changed the result. He allowed their expectations to collapse under the weight of contradiction, and that shift moved him out of immediate danger. By doing that, he changed his position in the moment and moved from being a clear target to becoming a question. Questions slow people down because they require interpretation instead of immediate reaction. That slowdown creates opportunity where there was none before. There are moments where being known works in your favor, and there are moments where it works against you. When it works against you, doing what people expect can cost you more than you are willing to lose. Recognizing that shift is what allows you to respond differently instead of reacting automatically. That awareness is what creates the possibility of a different outcome. David recognized that shift in real time, and he made a decision that most people would never consider. It did not look like strength on the surface, and it did not align with what people expected from him. It looked like something else entirely, but the outcome revealed what it really was. It was strategy applied under pressure. Not every situation rewards consistency, and not every moment allows you to show up the same way. There are times when strength is not demonstrated by reinforcing what people already believe about you. There are times when strength is demonstrated by interrupting that belief in a way that creates space for movement. That distinction is what separates reaction from control. When you interrupt expectation, you regain influence over the moment, and that influence allows you to move differently. It allows you to create outcomes that would not have been possible if you had remained predictable. That is what makes this moment so important, because it shows what happens when awareness meets action under pressure. And sometimes, that is the difference between being trapped by what people think they know about you and walking away with the outcome still in your hands.